Greetings, leopard artists. From my home art studio, I'm about to share a book called The Big Snow. It is a Caldecott Medal winner, and that means the artwork in the illustrations was so supremely good that it won a Medal of Honor for those illustrations. In this particular circumstance, the illustrators are also the authors, a husband and wife team of writing and illustrating by the name of Berta and Elmer Hayter. The Big Snow. Honk, honk, honk. The wild geese are flying south. The big harvest moon had come and gone. Red and gold were the leaves on the maples and oaks, and the wind that blew down from the north was cold. Mrs. Cottontail and the littlest rabbit sat on the warm, brown earth of the vegetable garden. Far below, at the foot of the hill, the broad waters of the river ebbed slowly to the ocean. They stared into the sky at the flock of wild geese. If you've been in my art room for a long time, I'm sure you recognized that these illustrations are watercolor, and some of them are graphite, which is shading and shadowing pencils. You know what that means, said Mrs. Cottontail. The littlest rabbit shook his head. He couldn't speak because his mouth was full of carrot tops. He didn't know why the geese were flying south. This was the first time he had seen them. That means that the cold winter days are near, and you will be needing a warm coat, said Mrs. Cottontail. Eat plenty of cabbage leaves and carrot tops, and you will have a thick coat for winter. The littlest rabbit nibbled another tender carrot top. This is what I mean by graphite, shading and shadowing pencils to show different values. An art element we've already discussed. The fat little groundhog who lived in a den just outside the garden fence looked up as the geese flew overhead. He had already put on his warm fur coat. Uh-oh, he said, it's nearly time for my winter nap. When the days grew short and cold, he went to bed and slept soundly until spring. This saved him the trouble of storing food for the winter. And I bet you know what that's called, whether you're a kindergarten artist or a fourth grade artist. Mrs. Chipmunk, with her cheek pouches full of seeds, stopped for a moment beside the little stone house on the hillside. She had worked hard all summer and had stored plenty of seeds and nuts for the winter in her home deep beneath the rock pile. Brrr, she said, it's getting cold. It's time for me to retire. The blue jay, perched on the topmost bough of the sycamore, looked at the geese flying high in the sky above the river. Well, well, it's later than I thought. He flew to the big pine tree where the cardinals were resting. Aren't you going south? He asked. No, indeed, replied the cardinals. We can find plenty to eat right here. We like winter. So here is a blue jay. And here is our Indiana state bird, the cardinal, a male, which are red, and a female, which are brown, sometimes tan, which is light brown. Song sparrows chirped happily on the hillside. They paid no attention to the geese in the sky, for they did not mind the cold weather. They knew that the meadow grasses were heavy with seed, and so were the birches and the ash trees. The bluebird sat on the roof of his house, built of cedar. He looked at a fat robin on the lawn below. It's high time to go south, he called. Not for me, said the robin. He tugged and pulled a fine fat worm out of the ground. I'm staying here this winter. High on the hill, a brown wood rat stopped to look at the geese. "Hey, hey," he squeaked. "There they go." He knew cold weather was coming, and he had carried seeds and nuts to his nest under a big rock. The ring-necked pheasants roaming through the woodland only stared at him. They never thought of leaving their home for the south. There was plenty of food for them on the hill, and they didn't mind the cold. I hope you've noticed at this point all of these animals and birds can be found right here in our home state of Indiana. "Caw, caw, caw," croaked 3 black crows in the cornfield as the geese flew by. They knew where to find food during the long winter months, and they never went south. They also don't seem very scared of the scarecrow, since they're sitting right there on his shoulders. Every day during the harvest season, the red squirrels and the gray squirrels had been busy storing nuts and acorns and seeds under the leaves and logs where they hoped to find them during the lean winter months. Their fur coats were thick and warm. They were ready for winter. The pretty white-footed wood mouse flicked his long tail as he looked at the geese flying high in the sky. He knew that winter was coming, but he had worked hard and had a good supply of seeds stored away in his underground nest. He wouldn't be hungry in the months to come. The short-tailed meadow mouse didn't bother to look at the geese. Winter held no terrors for him. The tunnels made by the moles led to sweet plant roots and to the tulip bulbs in the garden. He would have plenty to eat. If your family planted tulip bulbs, you might not like to hear that a meadow mouse might be snacking on them. Shy white-tailed deer browsed in the woods that covered the ridge at the top of the hill. Their coats were already thick and warm. Some of the deer saw the flying geese, but they never thought of leaving their woodland home, where there was food for all, growing so plentifully. Having a hard time turning the page. I'm sorry. And there were hill dwellers who came out to hunt for food at night. The skunk family who lived under the woodpile didn't care which way the geese were flying. They were happy and content on the hillside. There was plenty of food to be found if one only followed one's nose, and they could sleep through the coldest winter months in their bed of soft leaves and grasses. The raccoons followed their path through the woods. They too knew that winter was coming. When the deep snow covered the land, they would climb into their soft bed in the hollow trunk of an old willow to sleep until the cold days passed. The days grew shorter and shorter. When the first snow blew in from the north, the round winter moon bathed the hillside in silvery light, and the mice and the rabbits came out to dance and frolic. The skunks, the raccoons, and the deer left well-marked trails in the early winter snow. Then the night before winter holidays, there was a rainbow around the moon. The wise owl knew what that meant. A rainbow around the moon meant more snow, much more. Hoo! The sad trilling call of the screech owl was heard up and down and across the hillside. The owls were right. Soft gray clouds quickly filled the sky and blotted out the moon. The beautiful snowflake fell through the air and then joined by 2 that floated softly to earth, followed by 3, then 4. The snowflakes fell faster and faster and faster. Millions of snowflakes fell from the sky. It covered all the night and all the next day. The thick snow covered branches of all trees. The blanket of snow covered the meadows, the hills, the valleys. The snow was heavy on the roofs of the houses and barns. The snow stopped falling on the evening of the second day. Once again, the big silvery moon rose high in the sky. The owls winged noiselessly from the sycamore to the pine woods. Nothing else stirred in the silent, snow-covered land. Then the skunk family dug its way out from under the snow. They sniffed and sniffed, but all their sharp noses smelled was snow. So they crawled back to sleep again in their soft den. The raccoons scraped the snow away from their entrance to their home in the willow. They stared in wonder at the snow, then they hurried back to sleep until spring in their soft, warm bed. At dawn, the jays shook their feathers and left the shelter of the big spruce. The sparrows, the chickadees, the cardinals, and the lonely robins scrambled out from their shelters and flew from tree to tree, trying to find a place to perch on the heavy, snow-laden branches. They looked in vain for the seed grasses in the meadow. Ice and snow covered everything, even the seeds of the birches and the ash trees. The jays and the crows took wing to hunt for food. The jays flew north in great circles, and the crows flapped slowly south. There's our state bird again. The deer huddled together in the deep woods. Drifts of snow covered the bushes and grasses that furnished them with their food. The deer were hungry. Mrs. Cottontail and the little rabbits were hungry too. They came out from their nests underground to hunt for food. Snow, snow, nothing but snow, and the birds and the animals of the hill were very hungry. Then the sun rose above the hills clear and bright. The sharp eyes of the jays saw a little old man in a bright red cap come out of the stone house. He slowly shoveled a path through the deep snow. He was followed by a little old woman, dressed all in green. She scattered seeds and nuts and breadcrumbs to right and to left. The cry of the blue jays echoed over the hillside. Food, 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 they cried again and again. All the birds on the hill heard the happy call. Caw, 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 croaked the crows when they saw the little old woman put pans of food at the back of the house and the little old man drag hay from the shed and scatter corn on the snow. Food, 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 they called, and their cries were heard by the deer in the woodland away at the top of the hill. The squirrels heard them too and raced through the treetops. The snow had covered their hidden stores of nuts and acorns, and they were hungry. The skunk family and the raccoons, deep in their long winter sleep, did not hear the crow's call. In her warm burrow beneath the rock pile, the chipmunk opened one sleepy eye and ate a few peanuts, and then she closed her eyes again to dream of spring days to come. All the other animals hurried as fast as they could through the snow to the little stone house. The cardinals, the sparrows, the chickadees, and the lonely robin flew to the banquet, singing and chirping. The hungry pheasants in the woods heard the glad tidings and joined the happy group. The groundhog didn't wake up until the second day in February. He pushed up through the snow and looked about. The sun was shining brightly, and there on the snow, the groundhog saw his shadow. "Uh-oh, I know what that means," he said. "There will be 6 more weeks of winter, and he hurried back to his den to sleep until spring. The groundhog was right. It was a long, cold winter for the birds and animals on the hill, but the little old man and the little old woman put out food for them until the warm spring came. And that was the end of the big snow.